Hello. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kelly Walling, and I am here with William Myers, who is a 10-year veteran of the United States Army. Mr. Myers served tirelessly in the military for 10 years and earned the rank of sergeant. As a part of his job, he supervised day-to-day operations for welders and machinists. Also a part of his duties were to train and lead soldiers. He was deployed twice in his 10 years, once to Iraq and once to Korea. We are here today to speak about his experience in the military and how they affected his civilian life upon returning home from deployments. Welcome, William. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start off by talking about your first deployment, which was in Iraq, correct?
Yes.
How long were you deployed?
I was deployed for approximately 15 months, from April 2008 to July 2009.
During this time, was Iraq considered a combat zone?
It was, yes.
It was. So how do you think that affected it being your first deployment, how do you think that affected your duties being new to this type of situation?
So I don't really think it affected me personally because I wasn't afraid of deploying. I was more nervous because I didn't know what to expect. So when we first got to Kuwait, it was hot, and that was a shocker. It was very different because we're coming from Oklahoma where it was rainy, it was still a little bit chilly outside, to landing in Kuwait at 07 in the morning, and it was already over 100 degrees. Mm-hmm. So that was different. And then once we finished in processing and we actually got flown into Iraq, like I said, I wasn't scared. I was just nervous because I didn't know what to expect as far as how it changed me, mm-hmm. or whatever. It made me realize that I can't go about my day-to-day tasks how I had been going about them while I was home. So, I had to adjust to ensure survival, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how long was that, if you can remember, how long was that adjustment period? And what did that look like?
So it's typically a week, and it takes normally about a week to acclimate to any new environment, a week or two. Mm-hmm. And basically what that looked like was changing how I ate, changing how I worked out, upping my water intake, making sure I had enough salt in my diet. Just things that you typically wouldn't think to do, you start doing to adjust. I won't say it's hard to get used to, triple digit weather every day, but I think that's the hardest thing. Since you're working in an environment that your body's not used to, making those small changes like the diet, workout regimen, water intake, those all help in how you live while you're deployed.
So your lifestyle and the way that you lived changed drastically during this 15-month period?
I wouldn't say drastically. For the first few months, I started eating healthier. Mm-hmm. I was 20 years old when I went over there, so had a pretty fast metabolism. I ate a bunch of junk food, but when I got over there, I realized it made me really sluggish. Mm-hmm. So I started eating more clean, and I realized, I was getting my energy back. Excuse me. And I was able to manage my weight, drinking more water. My joints felt better. My body felt better. And then once I started really working out more, I won't say I started eating unhealthy again, but I wasn't eating as healthy. But I noticed that I was already acclimated to everything, so I was feeling better.
So your environment played a big role in how you performed your duties and your level of performance and being ready for whatever may have happened.
Yes.
During this time.
Yes.
Okay, so for your second deployment, which was in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
How long was that deployment?
That was 12 months.
12 months. Okay. So what were some key differences that you noticed from your first and second deployment?
There wasn't any shooting. There weren't any explosions. It wasn't as hot. It snowed in the wintertime. That was a major difference.
So Korea was a non-combat zone during this time.
Correct. It was definitely non-combat. It was just considered a hardship tour. I did receive hazard duty pay, but there was no actual combat. So that's the major difference.
So how did your duties differ from your first and second deployment? What were the key differences?
So in Korea, I just performed my MOS. So as a welder and a machinist, I work with my soldiers to, perform welding operations and machining operations. Also with my additional duties. So I was a master driver, which basically means I was the driver's training instructor. So I taught a lot of classes, did a lot of road tests. I licensed maybe 200 or 250 individuals. So Korea was more of I did my job unless something happened and we were recalled. Whereas Iraq, it was, we knew our tasks, which did not involve me doing my MOS. It involved me doing whatever was needed that day to get the job done. So, yeah.
So there's definitely some major differences, not just geographically, of course, but also with your job performance and what you have going on. There's not as big of a target that was on your back.
Correct.
Per se.
Right.
So with that, returning home, was the adjustment period between the first and second, what were the similarities or differences between your readjustment period to your civilian life?
So my deployment to Iraq was harder because when I was gone, my son was born, so I wasn't there for that. And when I got home, he was 10 months old, and he was fairly independent. So, I couldn't, he wouldn't allow me to feed him. He wouldn't allow me to change his diapers. He wouldn't allow me to be his dad because he got so used to seeing me on the computer that once he saw me in person, it was a shock for him. Once we started building our bond, I had to leave again. It was about 3 months after I got back, I left again for another month or so for school, and everything that we built over those 3 months had gone away. And I mean, not only with him, it definitely affected my marriage because while you're gone, while you're gone, the dynamics of the family shift. So, when we come back, we expect them to go back immediately, and they don't. And I expected to go back immediately, and it caused a schism in my marriage, and, it was tough. Whereas in Korea, by then, my son, he was maybe 5 years old. My daughter, she was 2, and, she didn't realize that I was leaving for such a long period. So like the day that I left home, she wouldn't give me a hug, she wouldn't talk to me until she realized I wasn't coming back home the next day. And it hurt. That's all I can say. It hurt because knowing that I was going to be gone, I wasn't going to be able to see her. It was just different. So when I got back from Korea, I understood that I cannot force any change on the dynamics of the family now. I had to go with the flow of things and then kind of reintegrate myself back into my family. And that's what I did. So it was easier. But I think by then, the relationship that I had with my son, that was already established. So that was, it was easy to get back in with him. Now my daughter, it was a little bit harder to get back in with her, because when I was home, I was hardly ever home. I was either always in the field training, or I was, working late. So we didn't really have a strong relationship. Mm-hmm. And I remember that I came home and I went to the school to surprise her, and she said, "Oh, that's Caitlin's dad, and that's my brother." So she was talking about her uncle, and I was like, "Man, is our relationship really that bad that you thought that I was your uncle?" Whereas when I went to surprise my son, as soon as he saw me, he broke down in tears and he gave me a hug, and it was just the difference in dynamics. Having a bigger family. My relationship with my wife, it was still pretty poor at the time because, having PTSD mm-hmm. and going untreated for so long medically and, therapeutically, it did a lot of damage. So, and I think a lot of that is irreparable. Mm-hmm. So it was hard, but, I think, again, back to the differences is the family dynamics. I had a smaller family coming from my first deployment, a larger family coming from my second. Mm-hmm. And I knew what I did wrong in the first one, so I tried to fix those in the second one, but there were still so many things that was wrong that potentially couldn't be fixed. So, just working on it.
Yeah. You mentioned that from your first deployment, you kind of recognized how you had to let things flow, and naturally, let your family kind of integrate back together. And then you also mentioned how you were diagnosed with PTSD. Do you think that your diagnosis kind of was troublesome with that idea that you had to let, the second time you returned home, you had to kind of let things go and flow naturally? Do you think that diagnosis kind of like hurt that situation and your ability to let things kind of naturally fall into place?
So I won't say it's my diagnosis. I think it was just how I was raised. Mm-hmm. I come from a very patriarchal family where the man is the head of the household. Mm-hmm. The man makes the decisions, and being raised like that and knowing only that way, that's what I wanted. So when I came home the first time, although my wife was, taking care of my son and running things and paying the bills, mm-hmm. I came home and I was like, okay, well, I'm in charge. I'm doing this. I make the decisions. And that was quite possibly the worst thing that I could do. Whereas on the second one, on my second time coming back, it was okay. She's the one that's in charge. I'm just gonna come back home and, see how things work out. And if it's not like I want it, so be it. Because I was gone for an entire year. I have to get used to how things are being done, and just reintegrate myself into that way of doing things. Yeah. So
reintegration seems to be kind of one of the hardest things for our military members to kind of expect and do once they return, because their life is so structured. Mm-hmm. When they're deployed, you're told when to do this, you're told when to do that, so you come back and you have all these responsibilities and no one's there to tell you exactly what you need to do, but they're still there and you need to get them done.
Right.
Do you feel that way?
So sometimes. Yeah. I've always been defiant, so I've always wanted to do things how I want to do them, when I want to do them.
Of course.
So, as I've aged, I've had to learn how to just back off and go with the flow of things and not do what I want to do when I want to do it. So, yeah.
Well, I do appreciate your service, and I appreciate you being here with us today. With this conversation, we kind of see that it is important to take care of our veterans, and especially the families as well, and including them in healthcare and decisions, because they are a part of, military life, and they need to be recognized. And we have to understand that oftentimes these deployments can cause a lot of other issues, and then when you come home, it's a completely different world from what you're used to, and it's important to address all the concerns of the family as well as the veteran.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here with us today, and we hope you have a good day.
Thank you for interviewing me today. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
It felt nice to get this off my chest.
Well, thank you. Goodbye.